Hi, I'm Christy and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. In today's video, I am going to be giving you my rundown of my mid-month wrap-up for August. So the beginning of August, I was one of the hosts for the Romance Takeover Readathon, so I have an entire vlog for all the books I read during that Readathon, which were the first 11 books for the month. So to see all of my reviews for those, you can check out that video. I will link it in the description of this video, but I'm not going to go too far into any of those books since I already did review them there, but I'll just quickly run through them and give you my star rating. So the first book was Fallen Jester by Devney Perry. This is the 5th book in her Clifton Forge series, and I gave this 5 stars. Next is The Sweetest Connection by Denise Williams. This is one of her airport novellas. This is a friends to lovers. They work in the airport together. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Next, I read an arc of Before I Let Go by Kennedy Ryan. This isn't out until November 15th, but I gave this one 5 stars, one of my all-time favorite books. Next, Once Upon a Midnight Kiss by Elisa Braden. This is a novella, part of her Rescued from Ruin series, and I gave this one, sadly, 2.5 stars. Business Casual by Danielle Allen. This is a workplace romance, kind of forbidden because she is the new hire, and then the hero ends up being the boss, but they meet before they know who one another is. I gave this one 3.5, but I rounded up to 4 stars. Everything for You by Chloe Leese. This is the 5th book in her Bergman Brothers series. This is an sports romance with some age gap. Don't really think this series is for me, but I gave this one 2.5/3 stars. Next, Forbidden by Carla Sorensen. This is the 4th book in her Ward Sisters series. This has age gap. It has a widowed single father as the hero. It is kind of sports adjacent. The heroine is from an NFL kind of royalty family, and then the hero was an MMA fighter who retired, and then he purchases a gym where she manages and works and teaches classes at the gym as well. Loved this one and I gave it 5 stars. Next was Flawless by Elsie Silver. The hero is a bull rider, and then the heroine ends up becoming like his handler or babysitter. He said some things caught on camera and his sponsors are wanting to pull, so his team sent her to look after him. I ended up giving this one 3.5/4 stars. Definitely have lots of thoughts on this one, which you can check out in my Romance Takeover Readathon vlog. Underneath It All by Kate Canterbury. This is the 1st book in her Walsh family series. This one has a curvy heroine. She's a teacher. She is wanting to open up like her own charter type school, needs to find a building and location, so she connects with the hero who him and his family own like an architect firm. Gave this one 4 stars. Great dirty talk, like tons of steamy times. Asher by Carrie Ann Cole. This is of course the 6th book in her Ashes and Embers series. They are a rock star royalty couple. They've been together for 15 years. They were teen parents. Their daughter has her own book, which is Torn, which is one of my all-time favorite Carrie Ann Cole books. And in this one, the heroine actually ends up going into a coma, and when she wakes up 8 years later, she has amnesia, doesn't even recognize herself, doesn't remember anything about her life. So it is her romance with her husband. I gave this one 4 stars. And then the last book that I read for the Romance Takeover Readathon was Love Flushed by Evie Mitchell. In this one, the heroine has Crohn's disease, and she owns a multi-million-dollar like eco-friendly toilet paper / sanitary products company. She ends up having to connect with a new manufacturer or supplier, which ends up being her ex-boyfriend from high school. So it is second chance romance. Gave this one 4 stars. So next I read an arc of Mafia Madman by Mila Finelli. This is the 3rd book in the Kings of Italy series, and this one I gave 5 stars. I loved it so much, and this is a villain / anti-hero gets his story. I think for this, it's definitely best to read the series in order because you learn how he is the villain from the 1st and 2nd book. Heroine as well, we meet her in both of the previous books as well. So in this, Gia is working in Milan. It's set in Italy. Works at like a fashion design house. One day she has to take the place of a model who can't be there for like a private showing for an investor. That ends up being Enzo, the hero, and he immediately recognizes Gia because he was involved with like her sister and brother-in-law. They're like also mafia people. That's who the first 2 books are based around. So he recognizes Gia right away, but she's living there under a false name. And he was like, this is the perfect chance to get my revenge on that family. So he ends up kidnapping Gia. She wakes up, she is on his yacht, and she is in a cage. So this one was a lot of fun. Definitely that captor-captive situation. It has touch her and you die vibes. Like he even says that a couple times. Their chemistry is electric. I loved that enemies to lovers banter, and this is like a true enemies to lovers, which of course I love to read. Get forced proximity, hate banging. There is some little bit of primal play in here, humiliation and like degradation kink. There's some praise kink. Of course, there is an age gap, which she's 20 and he's 38. And yeah, I just had a really fun time with this. I loved how Enzo's revenge plan definitely backfires. He pushes Gia and then she just like ends up pushing back harder on him, which was fun to see. Most of the time in the book is spent on his yacht, but we do get some mafia action as well towards the end. And we even get a sneak peek in this one of the next book in the series, which is going to be Mafia Target, which is following a character that we also met in the very first book. So I love this one. It just came out on August 9th, and I gave this one 5 stars. After that, I read an arc of Chosen by a Sinner by Michelle Hurd. This is the 4th book in her Sinners series. These are all standalone books, but they exist in the same like Mafia world. We've gotten heroes that are from the Greek Mafia, Irish Mafia, Italian Mafia, Turkish Mafia, of course the Bratva. So in this one, the hero of the book is the head of the Italian Mafia, and then the heroine in this, her father is the retired head of the Bratva, so she is a Bratva princess. This one is a we woke up married in Vegas situation. So in this one, the hero and the heroine, they've known one another their entire lives. Their families have always been super close. Like the heroine's dad is even the hero's godfather, and he is really good friends with her like brother, or who she sees as a brother to her. And over the years, they've both been mutually pining for one another. She's been crushing on him, but kind of tries to pretend he doesn't exist. And then him, on the other hand, he also has been crushing on her and also tries to ignore her the best he can. So after a drunken night in Vegas, they end up getting married, and then they get back, and him and their 2 fathers are like, you guys need to make this work. Like, you're not going to get an annulment. Just make it work for 6 months, and then maybe after that, we'll talk about an annulment. Hero sees this as his perfect time to finally have the girl that he's always wanted, and he tells her, like, we're going to live as a married couple. Like, we're going to be sleeping in the same bed. We're going to be living in my house. Like, all of these things. You're going to be my wife, like, for these 6 months. So I really liked the history between the hero and the heroine. All of the books in this series have had age gap. This one was, like, a little bit smaller. She's 26, he's 34. I like them just kind of sharing their likes and dislikes and getting to know one another, even though they've known each other their entire lives, like kind of getting to know living with one another. We even have some caretaking and like nursing back to health in this one. Of course, that protective hero, some mafia action. This one just ended up surprisingly being a really sweet romance, and I gave this one 4 stars. Next, I read The Missed Connection by Denise Williams. This is another one of her airport novellas. In this one, the hero and heroine first meet on a layover when they're both at the airport together. They share like a New Year's Eve kiss. They go their separate ways, and they both kind of always kept thinking of one another. So time passes, and then they end up actually meeting again, but this time as professional rivals. So they actually spent months working together, but before realizing who one another was or meeting in person. And then he flies in to meet the team and all of that, and she picks him up from the airport, and they realize then who one another is. So at first they're super excited because they're like, this is the person that we shared that kiss with, but then she realizes who he is and that he's been the one kind of challenging her work professionally. So she's definitely not excited to meet him. This one has a grumpy hero and sunshine heroine. They end up having to travel together for work, so there's tons of like airport trips together, shared motels, only one bed, all of that. This one was okay. I didn't like it quite as much as I did the other one in the series, so I gave this one 3 stars. Next, I read Duke's Gone Rogue by Christy Carlisle. This is the first book in her Love on a Holiday series. This one was just a super cutesy, low angst historical romance. It's set in like 1894, and it's set outside of London, so they're actually like in Cornwall. They're outside of the town and the society and all of that, which was fun. The hero in this one is a duke, and he has felt like it has fallen to him to kind of restore his family's reputation because of everything that his father did, which his father was known as like the devil duke. He broke deals, he lied to people, he stole from people, and so now the hero has set out his entire life while, you know, having the dukedom to also try to right all of his father's wrongs. So in the story, the hero and the heroine, they first meet at like a ball in London, and they have like a little moment, but they go their separate ways. And then the hero's sister tells him like, you know what, you're like totally grumpy and like a stick in the mud. You need to get out of London, and like you should go to one of our estates, like in Cornwall. It's like dilapidated. You can go like figure it out and check it out. So the hero takes off. He goes there to check out the estate and all of that, and he ends up seeing the heroine there, who her father used to be the groundskeeper for his father when he was the duke. So she still lives like on the property in her parents' cottage that is there as well. She's on a couple of local committees. They're trying to fix up and prepare for a royal visit coming up. So she connects again with the hero and tries to convince him to fix up his land and his estate because this like royal princess is coming and the whole town wants the place to look nice. So most of the book in this one is the townspeople trying to fix up their village and get ready for the princess who's coming and this like whole royal visit. Thought this one was just an average okay read, like nothing special about it. It was definitely low angst on the romance though, so like if you're in the mood for that, maybe pick it up. It has some cuter moments, and there's nothing like particularly wrong with the book. It just, you know, didn't grab my attention. The characters didn't pull me in, so I gave this one 3 stars. Next, I read 10 Queen, which is the 6th and final book in the Clifton Forge series by Devney Perry. I gave this one 5 stars. I have an entire like series review on my channel for this series. This one was great enemies to lovers. They are from opposite sides of like rival MCs, and the heroine sets out for revenge against the hero. This one was a lot of fun, and it was a great end to the entire series. So I read Corrupt Kingdom by Ava Harrison. This is the cover-to-cover book club pick for August, which is put on by Tori from Novel Life and Sam from Sam Reads a Little. This was my first time picking up anything from this author, which after I read and reviewed this one, I heard from multiple people and saw in other reviews that this is not the author's best work. So I gave this one 2.5 stars. This one definitely has Hades and Persephone vibes. It was just a little bit too on the nose for me. So basically in this one, the hero owns the wealthiest private bank in the world, and he caters to like all of these, like the underworld. So like drug dealers, gun runners, cartel, mafia, like dirty politicians, like all of that is who he helps make more money. So he definitely has that like I rule the underworld vibe, and like the heroine even likens him to Hades a few times. Like his dog's name is Cerberus. He ends up kidnapping the heroine, takes her on a boat to his island that is only accessible via boat. The heroine's into gardening because of her mother, and there's this whole like, you know, half of the year we'll live here and garden, and the other half I'll be with you at like your spot, you know, things like that. This one, the premise did sound interesting, but like sadly I just found it very lackluster and kind of boring. Like I mentioned, he kidnaps her and takes her away to his island, and then a lot of the time she is just there on her own at the house with his dog, and then like he'll show up every now and then, but their conversations were never really great. Nothing really pulled me into their chemistry. It just came off a little too try-hardy for me, and the romance was not it. I honestly started skimming some of the pages because I was like, this is boring. 2.5 stars for me for this one. Like I mentioned, I have heard from other people that this is not the author's best work. This was just the first one that I read from her. And then next I jumped into the Tattered and Torn series. First book in the series, Tattered Stars. Jess from Peace Love Books actually sent this one to me for my birthday. I know she loves this series, and so I was like, this is the perfect time to jump into the series. So this whole series is small town romance with like kind of romantic suspense vibes as well. This one, it starts off with the prologue. The heroine is 11 years old, and she rides into town one night on a horse from like her family's ranch or like cabin setup, and she comes into town and is looking for anybody to tell that her father has kidnapped a girl and has her locked up in their barn. Shortly after that, her father ends up going to prison, and then the heroine ends up going and living like with her sister in Seattle and her family. She comes back years later to the town. Her mother actually passed away, and in her will she left the heroine like their family cabin and all of their land. So the heroine is a vet tech, and she is determined to go back and kind of bring peace and hope to that land that like caused so much trauma in people's lives. She wants to create like an animal sanctuary there. So her father and family were definitely toxic. They had that very like anti-government, like prepping type lifestyle. They lived off the grid, didn't seek out medical help, like all of those things. First day back into town and she's at her house, the hero shows up and he is the local sheriff. Definitely has some history with her and her family. So with the hero, his sister was actually the one that the heroine's father kidnapped all those years ago and that she helped rescue. Hero has always held some guilt over that when his sister disappeared, and then even though she was rescued by the heroine, he still holds kind of all the grudges that he has against her family, against her as well, and doesn't treat her very nicely at first. But then over time, his family and his sister, who was rescued, they all kind of give the heroine a chance because they're like, it wasn't her fault, like it was all her father. And so they all kind of help. They come to her land, try to help her fix it up and build this whole animal sanctuary. So it is the romance between the hero, which is the sheriff, and then the heroine. This one was really fun when I liked the small town setup and kind of meeting all of the characters. Everyone has some drama in here with her family who still lives in town, like her brother and uncles and cousins. They kind of all live that doomsday prep kind of lifestyle, like off the grid and very like anti-government and everything else. I really liked how the hero and his whole family kind of take the heroine in, and she finally sees like what a loving and trusting family life could be like. I love this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. Next I read Snowbound, which is a novella that's part of the Tattered and Torn series. So I think it's like book 0.5. This one you can get for free, like either as an ebook or the audiobook from the author's website when you sign up for her newsletter. So this one is just super short and quick. It's like 30 to 40 pages. So it definitely moves fast. This one takes place during winter. It's like days before Christmas, and the heroine has packed up her entire life and has fled Nashville to head to Oregon to see the hero because she needs like safety and protection. She has a stalker situation. So she drives through the snowstorm. She like ends up crashing into a snowbank, and she gets out and hikes like the last mile to the hero's cabin. She shows up at his doorstep and he's like super surprised that she's there. So we learn they have a little bit of history. He is like her brother's best friend, and they always kind of had feelings for one another but didn't give in. So they quickly do give in. He's protecting her. We even have like Hayes, which is the hero from the first book because he's the local sheriff. He shows up, so he has like a little cameo moment. Super fast moving, has that romantic suspense element as well. I definitely would have liked more from this one and seen it as a full book, but like for what it is, it definitely delivered, so gave it 3.5 stars. Next, I jumped into Fallen Embers, which is the second book in the Tattered and Torn series by Catherine Cowles. This one is a brother's best friend romance where the hero is a single dad to twin daughters. So this one, the heroine of this book, she is actually one of the sisters of the hero of the first book, and she has always crushed on her brother's best friend. So the heroine works as an EMT, and while she's not doing that, she's always liked to do like daredevil stunts. She even has like a social media account where she posts some of her stunts and things that she does. And in this one, the hero is a single dad to those twin daughters after divorcing his ex-wife, and he has kind of always kept the heroine in the friend zone. And he starts to kind of have more feelings for her and feels very protective over her, especially when she starts getting harassed and attacked online on like all of her social media accounts. She always did all of her like daredevil stunts and things like that kind of, you know, secretively or anonymously, and so now she is super worried because someone has figured out who she is and has been leaking all of her like personal information. So in this we get to see lots of the hero's daughter's relationship with the heroine, which was sweet to see. It was nice for the hero to finally give in to his feelings for the heroine, which took him a while. I didn't like this one quite as much as I did the first book in the series, and this was mostly because of the hero's ex-wife, like all the drama involved with that. And then the heroine also has a super complicated relationship with her mother, which is kind of different than how we saw the mother portrayed in the first book in the series, where she was like super open and welcoming to the heroine in that book. So her mother and her have a definitely complicated relationship. The mother's kind of always disappointed in her, doesn't see her as like a, you know, functioning, responsible adult. And she just always expects the worst from the heroine, kind of says some really mean and nasty things to her, which I definitely get. Complex relationships like that are a real thing. It was just definitely hard to read about or kind of root for them to even have a relationship after how she was treating her daughter. I felt like all of the drama from that, like that whole complex relationship with the mother and then the ex-wife slash mother of the children of the hero, all kind of overshadowed the romance for me. That said, it is definitely a solid small town series, and of course I continued on anyways, but yeah, this one I gave 3.5/4 stars. Next I read Hidden Waters, which is the third book and like the most current book out in this Tattered and Torn series, and this one I gave 4 stars. So this one, the hero is the brother of the hero and heroine of book 1 and 2, and then the heroine of this book, she is the cousin of the heroine of book 1. The heroine has always lived in the lifestyle that the heroine in book 1 did, like those whole like anti-government prepper type families, but the heroine got out of that situation and is trying to kind of, you know, slowly piece her life together, like get a GED, get a job, get a driver's license, do all of these like independent things that she missed out on. And then the hero in this, he is a doctor, and he actually returned home after some incidents in the previous book with his sister, so he wanted to move back with his family. So in this one, the hero and heroine end up living together and they become roommates. I really liked seeing their friendship and kind of relationship evolve from there. I liked seeing all of the growth of the heroine and kind of her accomplishing all of these things that she, you know, never would have been able to if she would have stayed with her family. There, of course, is the drama from the family of just, you know, her getting out of that lifestyle and them kind of, you know, still being around and saying like super mean things to her. And it was kind of nice seeing the hero, like he's a doctor and he even sets up like a local clinic for some of those people who live more off the grid in their town. I liked seeing him and the heroine get involved in that. Of course, it's not a Catherine Cowles book if nobody's getting kidnapped at the end of it, so there definitely is some romantic suspense as well. But yeah, I liked this one and I gave it 4 stars. So the last time I did an update, it was actually on my birthday, and then I wrapped up all of the books I had read for the first 10 days of August, and then right after that we ended up going on a little family trip that we always do around my birthday. So we were gone for like 5 or 6 days, you know, in the RV, camping and all of that, and had some fun. Went down to like an ocean side little harbor and all of that. So we just got back from that trip last night, and then I'm here now to just wrap up the last remaining books I have read for the first half of August. So I read Pen Pal by J.T. Geisinger. I got an arc of this one about a week before it came out, so the book is out now to read, but I gave this one 4 stars. This one, the author did a lot of back and forth marketing on it before it even came out. First it was a dark romance, and then she changed it that it was going to be a a non-traditional romance with a non-traditional ending. And then she eventually went on to say it's just an erotic thriller. I'm sure lots of people have already seen and know about this book and the entire marketing thing that went along with it from the author, and just that kind of back and forth thing, what is this book? Is it a romance? Is it not a romance? So I already knew all of that before going in, just kind of the wishy-washiness of the entire marketing campaign for it, and just, what is this book gonna be? But I was down for the ride anyways, because I read more than just romance anyways, so I was just along for the ride that she was gonna take us on. I usually enjoy J.T. Geisinger's writing anyways. But I went in with 0 expectations for this book, not expecting a romance at all, and just gonna be up for whatever she delivered. So in this book, we start with a main character. Her name's Kayla, and her husband has just passed away, and she's at his funeral when the story starts. So she's struggling with the grief from that, and when she comes back from the funeral, she ends up getting a letter delivered to her house, and it is from the Washington State Penitentiary. So it's addressed to her from a man named Dante, and the note only says, "I'll wait forever if I have to." So she's both kind of intrigued by this and kind of frightened, because who is this dude, and why is he writing to her? And so over time, she ends up writing back to him, and they kind of have a lighter pen pal relationship, I would say. Even though the book is called Pen Pal, I would say it's really light on the pen pal aspect of the story. So around the same time, Kayla and her husband, the house that they owned is an old Victorian house. So she's having a lot of electrical issues, light bulbs are exploding, there's cabinets opening and closing. She's having unusually cold drafts in the house, a lot of creaking floorboards, she's having some confusing dreams, and then things are objects that she puts down are either reappearing or not where she thought they'd be. She ends up needing a mechanic to come and check out the house, and she calls and hires somebody. This guy named Aiden shows up, and then it becomes her kind of relationship with him, and then the story unfolds from there, which I don't want to say too much, because the book just came out. So right away, this was giving me eerie paranormal thriller vibes, and it was reminding me actually of a lot of movies or TV shows that I've seen, which at the end of the book, I was glad to see that the author, some of the inspirations for this book that were movies that I mentioned that, reminded me of parts in the book. So I thought that was pretty funny. Geisinger is of course a fantastic storyteller, and she does deliver on plenty of steamy times in this one. Like I mentioned, it is an erotic thriller. It is not a romance. Once you read this and get to the end of the book, you will know what she means about that non-traditional romance and that non-traditional ending. Like I mentioned, this book does have a love story throughout it. We have lots of steamy and kinky times, primal play, all sorts of things going on. And I would say in a twisty sort of way, the ending is kind of somewhat barely a little bit of positivity in there. So yeah, I enjoyed the ride. Do I think the book was incredibly marketed wrong? Yes, absolutely. And I can see why people are angry about that, going in expecting a romance, and that's not what this is at all. But I think if you are up for the ride and know that it's an erotic thriller going in, that you might enjoy it as well. Next, I read Christmas in Quincy by Devney Perry, and this is the first book. It's kind of like the prequel novella to her Eden's series. So this one I really loved, and I gave it 5 stars. So the heroine in this is Cleo, and her father is a billionaire businessman. So she ends up packing her bags and escaping California and taking off to Quincy, Montana. So she checks in to this super quaint little inn, which is the Eloise Inn, and this is owned by one of the Edens. The Edens is a family, and the series is gonna follow them in Montana. So just as Cleo checks into the room, she goes upstairs, she's ready for her champagne, pop the bubbly, toss on the slippers, and just enjoy a super nice, relaxing Christmas. She gets a knock at her hotel door. It ends up being her father's head of security, who is Austin, and he is her bodyguard. So Austin is tasked to grab Cleo and take her back to California. But when she refuses to stay, he has to stay along as well. And of course, he goes down to the hotel to get his own room, and they're all booked up. So they have to share a room, share a bed, and it's just a really fun time. Cleo owns a bakery back in California, and so she's never taken a vacation before or done anything like this for herself. So it's fun to seeing her relax. She also gets into the kitchen at the Eloise Inn and ends up baking some goodies up. And then we find out that Austin has been Cleo's bodyguard for years, and they kind of have a little bit of mutual pining going on between the two of them, which was fun to see play out. Just loved getting to meet all of the Edens as well, and this whole series I can't wait to dive into. Next, I read an arc of Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood, and this one comes out on August 23rd. Actually forgot I had this one. I didn't request this one, but the publisher sent me an arc, and so I decided to read it before the publish date. So I had read The Love Hypothesis last year, kind of last spring or summer before it got a ton of hype, and I actually thought it was okay. I wasn't a super fan of it. I didn't really love it. It was just okay. It was cute. It was fine and easy to read. Then I went on to read the author's STEMinist novellas, the 3 books that she put out like for the summer. Some of those were hits, some were misses. I think for me, those novellas were like the perfect amount that I like from this author, because I have noticed, even with Love on the Brain as well, she does the same exact story and tropes and like setup over and over again, which I knew the author's start for like the love hypothesis and all that was in fan fiction. And so I guess I just assumed she wrote other fanfic instead of like, this is all the same fanfic like told over and over again, which a friend recently told me that like the author is going to be doing different spins on stories later on with like some of her upcoming 3rd and 4th books. And this one, basically the heroine is a neuroscientist. She finds out she's going to be the co-lead investigator at like a NASA project, but she has to team up with her like college nemesis. And then during her free time as well, she also runs like anonymously a academic like Twitter handle, which she actually has a conversation or like years of friendship with the hero that they don't realize they are one another on their Twitter accounts versus, you know, in person. So the things that didn't work for me, I wasn't a fan or into like any of the work setup and everything going on there. I didn't really like the side characters or any of their friends at work. Also, really wish we had dual POV in here. There is kind of like a little bit of a workaround in this one, because since they have that like anonymous Twitter like conversations going on, we do kind of see the hero's thoughts and like all that he's telling the heroine about her without like knowing it's her. So we kind of get his thoughts that way. And then of course the miscommunication. This author does miscommunication in like every single book of hers that I've read, and it just drives me bonkers because it's the type of miscommunication where it's like so simple and like they're just not letting the other person talk or finish a sentence. Like they interrupt one another, and so it just is like drawn out for way too long, and it's just super annoying. That said, the relationship and chemistry between the hero and heroine in this one, I liked it better. I started to enjoy it more around the 50% mark when they start hanging out and having to spend time together. She even stays with him at his house. I will say I liked the hero more than the heroine in this one. Overall, it was okay. I think if you already do love this author's books and you did love the love hypothesis, you'll probably love this one. For me, it was just too similar and like kind of like, you know, let's do something new here. So for me, it was 3 stars. Then I ended up reading The Roughest Draft. This is actually an author duo, and I believe they are a couple in real life. So in this one, I really like the premise of it. The hero and the heroine, they are like co-authors, that they used to write a ton of popular books together. They were like literary darlings and getting all of this hype with their like co-written books topping the bestsellers list. But during all of this hype of their career is actually when they fell apart behind the scenes and haven't written a book since. But on their contract, they have one final book that they have to put out together, and so they have to end up working together. And what they do is every time they write a book together, they go on a retreat together, just them. They stay somewhere and they just write and hash out like the entire book. Now they have to do this and go on that secluded retreat after not talking for years. So like I mentioned, the premise of this one was super interesting and I liked it in the beginning. I liked that like, you know, co-authors writing situation and then like coming up with a book. And we do get a lot of flashbacks of like what happened to them in the past and like why they stopped talking. But around the midway point, it kind of started losing my interest. I felt like it was going nowhere and the characters were just not it for me. I did not find either of them enjoyable or likable. And I just found myself not really caring what tore them apart in the past. And I didn't think that there was anything in the present day keeping them from being together. So it was just kind of like a slog to get through. I ended up giving this one 2 stars. And then I picked up Does It Hurt by H.D. Carlton. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. This one is a dark contemporary romance. This was my first time reading anything from this author. I'll probably pick up more from them in the future, but I know the cat and mouse duet, I believe is called, is like super popular, and I've been intrigued by that one. So this one was just a ride. I don't want to say too much about it, but it's pretty much like there is a fugitive, it's set in Australia, there's a shipwreck, there is shark encounters, there's a one-night stand, there's a morally gray hero and heroine, there are bus stops, there are tattoos, there is a storm, there is a shipwreck, there is an island, there is some chains, there is some hate banging, there is enemies to lovers, there's revenge sex in here, there is some stranded and like very thriller vibes, and then of course like just a survival story. I wanted a little bit more from the romance in this one, but otherwise I enjoyed this wild ride and gave it 4 stars. So those are the 26 books that I have read for the first half of August. Let me know in the comments if you read any of the books that I mentioned, or maybe what your favorite book so far of August has been. I'm already excited for the last half of August. There are already so many good books piling up that I want to get to and check out. So if you haven't done so yet, make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos, and I'll see you in my next one.